Hello, listeners. Welcome to another episode of Geopolitical Cousins. We are back. I throw some shade at those of you who were complaining about the fact that you didn't have any episodes. But by way of explanation, my daughters were sick. Actually, my 3-year-old got tubes in her ears. Marko was traveling, was on vacation. We also have clients. As you can imagine, clients want to talk about what's going on. So just a lot piled up. Also, as we talk about in the episode, every time we were recording, by the time we could turn it around, even when we were turning it around in a couple of hours, we were being overtaken by events because things were so crazy. And it's remarkable to think we hadn't recorded in 13 days and not that much has actually changed in the conflict. I know it feels like every single day, 5 different things are changing. But oil's 93 a barrel as I'm recording. It was 100 a barrel the last time that we recorded. So hope you enjoy the episode. Email me at jacob@jacobshapiro.com if you have any questions, comments, concerns. We're glad that you missed us. If you did miss us, make sure you are sharing the podcast, giving ratings, giving reviews, all that good stuff, because the more listeners there are, the more episodes we do. Simple math. Okay, take care of each other. I hope that the doomsday scenarios that I'm outlining here don't come true. Let's hope that Marko bathing his nihilism and his more optimistic point of view is the one that carries the day. In the meantime, we will see you out there. Guys, I'm wearing a Lacoste V-neck. Marco's just popped 2 Peronis. I've got mine here. Let's go. I love how needy you are, listeners. I love it. I just want to point out that the last time that we recorded an episode on March 13th, Brent futures closed the day at 101. Right now, recording at 7:52 Central Time, Thursday, March 26th, they're at 93. So, like, what the heck has really happened? Like, what are you worried about? Nothing's happened, right? How's it going, cousin?
Oh man. Yeah. No, I mean, there are many reasons that we didn't record for the last 13 days, but one of them was a social experiment. Number one, to see if we were going to get stormed like the Bastille, and we have. I suggested we let our listeners eat cake. I don't know what the equivalent of that is. But the other one is exactly what you just said. There's been so many twists and turns of this saga. We could have recorded 3-hour podcasts every single night. We didn't. And here we are with yet another, like soggy taco to talk about.
Yeah, have we even really missed anything? Although, did you see? I want to give credit where credit was due. This tweet from Les Shrub is the name. It's agnostox with a bunch of X. Trump pausing the period of energy plant destruction in Iran by 10 days is not a taco, but more of a nacho, not actually changing Hormuz opening. Really like that one. Although, then I also liked one of the replies from Tony War, getting dangerously close to a quesadilla, quagmire under extended supply and dispersed Iranian low-intensity lethal attacks, which is probably where I'm going to come down here on the end. Cousin, I also thought it was interesting when they were trying to storm the Bastille. Like, you are the cynic, the nihilist cynic in our dialogue, and yet you're so soft-hearted about the listeners when they come to you and you're like, where are the episodes? You like want to respond to them. Whereas I'm like more wearing my heart on my sleeve with my analysis. But when these people come to me and they're like, where are the episodes? I'm like, bro, can you please like go away? Like, I don't have time to talk to you right
I
now.
mean,
It's a nice imbalance in our relationship.
I love yeah, like I I find like we've achieved what we set out to do with this podcast, which is create a following of people who just enjoy listening to geopolitical analysis. And obviously, there's a reason Muppets are the logo for our podcast. We're not going to be right all the time. We're not going to be wrong all the time. Sometimes it's just going to be comedy. But yeah, I just love the fact that people want this. I feel the same way. Like when Bill Simmons goes on vacation when the NBA season ends,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm angry at him. I'm like, why? Like, like
Well,
keep recording.
this shows you how petty I am. I'm still angry at Bill Simmons for basically just stopping. He just stopped
Writing.
writing.
I
He
know.
decided his fingers didn't work anymore. So I
Yeah.
literally don't follow his podcast. I
Mm,
search for every individual episode because I don't want him to have the
interesting.
extra single follower. Because I'm like, man, you're not even giving me like one article a year. Can I have one trade value column, like a mailbag, something? Like, you're just
Oh
mailing it
man.
in.
Yeah, reading those Bill Simmons columns, man. That was college for me.
Yeah, I was back in it. Okay, we're already off track. We will get to Bill Simmons and basketball by the end. Um, I mean, everything I'm going to say is going to be overtaken by events, even though we're pushing this out as quickly as possible, probably first thing in the morning tomorrow. But let's kind of get a lay of the land where we are right now. President Trump, with, I mean, a series of incredible appearances, statements, tweets. The most recent one, this tweet that, as per Iranian government request, please let the statement serve to represent that I am pausing the period of energy plant destruction by 10 days to Monday, April 6th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Did he just tell the Iranians like how long he's going to wait until he ends the war? He also, the Xi Jinping visit is back on
Yeah,
next month, so he also is
nice.
sort of telegraphing
If there's
by
jet
which point he.
fuel, if there's jet fuel to take you there.
Yeah, there's that. But then there's also, I mean, I've lost track of how many different troop deployments are headed towards the Middle East. And is it Karg Island? And is it going to be 10,000, troops taking Karg Island? You've got Yoav Gallant, the former, I believe he's the former defense minister of defense for Israel, out there writing columns about how it has to be taken, and all those other sorts of things. So, ground. I even saw one quote from Axios that said the Pentagon is developing military options for a final blow that will finally bring Iran to its knees. They're not going to be brought to their knees. I don't know why we're talking about it this way. You've had China weigh in and be like, "Yeah, we'd like the Strait open right now." You've had Iran base. I mean, not. I don't know. Is the Strait open? Is the Strait not open? I know we're going to talk about that in a second. Um, yeah, I mean, where and crude is sitting there at 93, even though every single sober energy analyst that I respect is literally lighting their hair on fire. Um,
Wait, let's
Please
pause on that. Let's double
pause.
click on that because same. Every single energy analyst, and I've also polled my clients who do nothing but trade oil. Not all of my clients, but those that do nothing but trade energy and commodities. I have called them. You know who they are. They're headquartered in nice, quaint Swiss villages. I've talked to them, and they're basically like, this is the end. You know, they're basically like fleeing civilization. Folks on X that I follow that I respect in the energy space as well are basically saying like this is truly a monumental loss. Now, not yet. Technically, we have been able to use various reserves, floating storage, and the bypass that Saudi Arabia and UAE have to effectively make sure that this is one of the top 10 largest crude supply losses in history. But from everything that I know, all the math that I've done at BCA Research, and all the clients I've talked to who actually do this for a living, by mid-April, this is going to fall off a cliff. It's going to fall off the clizzy. And
Well, and just wait until you're. I mean, I know you were in Europe, but I mean, I'm sure you also visited with your friends, the Houthis. I actually heard a rumor that you were named leader of the Houthis going forward, the Ayatollah Papich from
I'm
Yemen.
actually sponsored by a new line of what do you call them? Vapes, you know?
Oh, that's
So
good.
yeah,
That's
cot
great.
vapes.
I was hoping for a patch, but a vape is just as good. So you've got all those tankers that are going across, like into the Red Sea, and what is it? We're up to 5 million, 6 million barrels per day.
It can't be more
Um,
than 5. It's 4.5, 5. Yep. But
okay.
just one thing I would say about that. So like it's a little bit of a side note that you just brought in, but let's do it. I'm not too worried about the Houthis. I love them, my brothers in Kat. The issue is Yonbu, which is the Saudi port, is pretty far north. The ships are not necessarily they don't have to go through the Red Sea. They can go through the Suez. They can go through Suez. So can the Houthis fly drones all the way to Yonbu? I mean, you can open Google Maps, take a look at it. It's in line with Egypt, so this is very far north. The answer is yes, yes they can, but the distance is so far that the Saudis will have plenty of time to intercept those drones. So this isn't the same as when the Houthis were flying stuff at vessels off the coast of Yemen, where like some poor ship, like they don't know how to intercept a missile coming at them or a drone. The Saudis will protect Yonbu from Houthi attacks, I think, competently. And so I'm not too worried about that. The Houthis joining the attack, like, I don't really care. This oil is going to go through Suez. Unfortunately, not with VLCCs. I mean, it's going to have to be smaller ships, but whatever, it doesn't matter. Like, it will get to Europe. The problem is that it's still not enough. So, I mean, for those of you listening to this and you're not in finance or you're not finance bros, look, it's very simple. How is this war going to affect your life? Right now, it's like, oh, where gasoline prices are up. Nah. Like, the world will stop. If this continues for 3 more weeks, we're in 2020. Tom Hanks has fucking Rona. That's where we are in 2 weeks. Maybe this week. I don't know. We'll see. But like,
Well, I mean that's one of my questions. Like the timeline
yeah.
here is a little because President Trump, we're holding off the destruction of Iranian energy plants for 10 days. I'm gonna meet Xi Jinping at the beginning of
In May.
May.
Yeah. Everything will be over by then.
Everything will be fine. By the way, all of this depends on Iran eating the taco. Like at this point in the stage, it seems like President Trump, this is my silly joke. President Trump is offering the taco and it's carnitas. And the Iranians are like, that's kind of haram. Like can you give us a not pork taco? This is like just completely unacceptable. We will accept a cot taco with some beans on it. Like, and they're like going back and forth and not talking to each other. Or are they even talking to each other? I don't know.
No, they are. They are. I think that's the media just being like, TDSing and stuff. Like, yeah, of course they're talking to each other. But look, here's what I would say. Here's a couple of things that, 2 headlines I want to give you. They have nothing to do with oil. Helium shortage has started impacting tech supply chains, executives say. So this is a Reuters article. Now, helium shortage can be mitigated. Other natural gas producers can step up, including the US. But it's a little bit like the neon gas fake crisis of 2022 that never happened. But like, nonetheless, like, here you go. We're going to have to mitigate this. The second is Iran war chokes petrochemical supply, sends plastic prices soaring. And finally, just LNG. LNG is liquefied natural gas. Taiwan, South Korea depend on LNG that transits Strait of Hormuz. Taiwan for 40% of its electricity generation. So if you're sitting in the United States of America, you're listening to this podcast and you're like, bro, like, what are these two guys talking about? We're good. We got all the oil we need between Mexico, Canada, the 51st state of Venezuela. We're good. It's like, no, you're not. First of all, oil is fungible. Oil prices will rise in the US. But more importantly, there's also sorts of other things. And even more importantly, if you're a tech bro and you're like, we're good, we're just going to keep building AI data centers. No, you're not, because there's not going to be any semiconductors to put in them. You might want to put some Lego bricks, but fuck, those are built out of plastic too, and Denmark hates you.
Yeah.
So the point is that by mid-April, it is very difficult to see how this doesn't fall off a cliff in a non-linear way. And that's why a lot of the oil experts you're citing, when they're freaking out because they see that far ahead, they understand that there's a physical problem here. It can be mitigated for a while. President Trump's order to release Russian and Iranian sanctioned oil, great idea, smart, I support it, whatever, but that's 30 days. And once that expires, once we lose that floating storage, it's going to be pretty ugly. So this brings up the question of like the new troops coming in. Look, here's the thing. I'm like 1.5 beers in. I haven't slept in 24 hours. So I'm going to be a little disjointed, but let me break this down for people.
Turn on the hold on. Let's turn on the TikTok camera or whatever camera we're supposed to turn on.
Please.
Turn it on.
Yes. Stormin Norman Schwarzkopf. May he rest in peace. He had at his disposal 500,000 American troops, 750,000 coalition forces during Operation Desert Shield. Okay, this is Gulf War I. 750,000 men with guns.
Desert Shield?
Yeah, Operation Desert Shield, right?
It's not Desert Storm? Is Desert Shield separate?
I think first it was Desert Shield, then it was Desert Storm. But
okay, sorry. Oh, yes, you're right. Sorry. Keep going.
Yeah, 1.5 beers in. I know my history. All right.
That's why they pay you the big bucks.
This is Norman Stormin Schwarzkopf, the Schwarzkopf Doctrine. What's the Schwarzkopf Doctrine, which is a mouthful, especially for a man who hasn't eaten and is 1.5 beers in? But like, look, it's you don't do anything unless you have an overwhelming advantage. And so that's what he did. 12 years later, Donald Rumsfeld shows up in the Middle East with 300,000 troops and gets eviscerated in the press for having too little. And turns out he was actually right. It was cool. Like 150,000 was all we needed to defeat Saddam. But the point is that the United States of America walked into this and is now sending 5,000 Marines and 1,000 members of the 82nd Airborne. Like, guys, these all better be clones of Chuck Norris. May he rest in peace. You know what I mean? But like 6 to 8,000 troops. And then someone's like, yeah, but there's like 50,000 American troops in the Middle East already. No. That's cooks. That's dudes putting bombs on planes. That's pilots. There's like 10,000 human beings that you can scrounge up to add to the 6 to 8,000 that are coming into the Middle East. We can be generous, say there's 20,000. Now, there's reports that there's 10,000 more. Fine, there's 30,000. What are you going to do with 30,000 people? And by the way, this entire time, Iran is like Kevin in Home Alone, all right? What do you think Iranians are doing right now, man? They're like, you know, the famous scene in Home Alone where the kid is running around the house fucking putting traps? We're Joe Pesci, all right? We're about to walk into this suburban Chicago home and get, destroyed. So there is no, unless there's some supersonic weapon that America has that's going to literally prove me wrong. The scales here are so crazy, Jacob, that if there is a plan to eventually build up to that 150, 200, 300,000 ground troops, if that's the plan, the truth is it's going to blow through our timeline, which is that by mid-April, the world economy is going to fall off a cliff. So there's really only two ways that this can go. There's only really two ways.
Mm-hmm.
Either all these troops are there to kind of bluff, to kind of scare the Iranians into a better deal, or President Trump has just decided that a global recession is cool, like an American recession because of whatever it is that he's trying to do in Iran.
Yeah, I'm not sure recession is strong enough, but yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, pandemic level, total extinction event for commercial activity.
Okay, we've thrown a bunch of headlines back and forth, so I want to help take us back for a second, and sort of at the start of this, I think you and I were both on the same page that this. I don't know how you felt about what I did not think this was going to happen. I think you were more on that this was going to happen, but I think both of us were.
Oh, I was definitely. No, I was putting money at work that this was going to happen.
That this was going to happen.
Since January. Okay. Well, after Venezuela, my big takeaway was like, look, I don't think President Trump can really contain himself from following such an extraordinary success by not trying to do this again.
Mm-hmm. Well, but I think both of us were on the same page that this was a 3 or 4 week thing max, that there was no way that this was going to go on. I have revised my view. I think it's broken. I think we're already beyond the window. And my base case is that either he's okay with the global recession or he's of the mistaken worldview that he doesn't think it's going to happen. Or even if he wants to pull back right now, I'm not sure that he can pull back right now. I don't want to make the mistake of thinking that the Trump administration are a bunch of idiots and that the Iranians are geniuses. I actually think both of them are fairly stupid. But I think on a relative basis, the Iranians are being less stupid than the Americans are being. And that exactly what I said, the exact reason that I said this was going to last 3 or 4 weeks was that at that 3 or 4 week mark, all of the leverage starts to turn. And it's the Iranians with the asymmetric advantage that can start calling the shots. I think we're there, cousin. They have no reason to accept a taco or a nacho or whatever else it is. They're talking about deploying troops to Kharg Island. They got to be thinking, great.
Great.
Like, when are
Bring
you
him.
showing up? Do you
Yeah,
want dinner
please.
reservations? Like, what do you like?
Yeah.
Come on down. We are ready for it. You want to stick around? You want to do this until May? Great, we can do this till May. And you can have your silly little things at Yanbu. Keep on doing it. Like, just watch what happens to all these other things that are happening. I mean, they're in the driver's seat here. So why on earth, after taking all this punishment, would they start to pull back? And by the way, the other element of this, I mean, the sort of weaker link here, and I'm curious, I'm sure we'll get some feedback from our Israeli listeners. The situation in Israel politically does not look good. You had Tzipi Livni, former prime minister, coming out and saying Israel doesn't meet the basic definitions of a state anymore. It's territory. We're not sure what the borders are. The state doesn't have a monopoly of violence. You had, I don't know if you saw Yair Lapid, also a very brief former prime minister of political opposition, saying that the IDF is saying that the troops, the reservists, are on their sixth or seventh deployment. That the IDF is on the verge of exhaustion and collapse. That it can't possibly continue. Meanwhile, Israel's going to conquer southern Lebanon. I mean, that's just a flat out invasion of a country to its north. Like, we could talk about Hezbollah and the threat. Okay, cool. You're still invading southern Lebanon with a military force that is designed for short term blitzkriegs, not for long term occupation campaigns. Can't believe we haven't. And then before you get to the interceptors are running out and the asymmetry of everything else. So I don't know. I have revised my view. Have you revised your view? Do you think we're going to be done here in a week? Like, how are you feeling? Because I'm not, and I'm looking at the energy analysts and like, I'm thinking, okay, like, yeah, I'm keeping my longs on energy and I'm keeping my longs on shipping and I'm adding some agriculture exposure and some of that petrochem exposure down the road because there's no way you're fixing that in any kind of short horizon of time. Where are you at? Because you can tell, I'm getting jittery.
You know what? I'm not in the same boat as you, and let me explain why. I feel like a little bit. You sound like the folks who, in April of 2025, started telling me how, like, no, man, you got to understand, Trump was always about tariffs. That was always his biggest issue. No, he actually does believe he's the next McKinley. He really does want to finance the entire government through tariffs. And you're like, what? Like, that was 1890s, man. Like, the US government was 1% of GDP. Relax. Like, that's not going to happen. So, I don't like the reason that I am not in your camp is that the same people that I talk to, the same commodity trading firms in Switzerland, like the White House is talking to them. You know, like I believe they know. I believe they know that between April 10th and April 20th is some sort of a window where we start running out of, like, like Australians will not be able to fly off of their continent. The semiconductor fabs in Taiwan will stop producing chips. MRIs will not work because they need helium. Like, that's like the world we're going to be in. It's pandemic extinction level event.
Worse than the pandemic. That's way worse than the pandemic. The pandemic was political hysteria. Like, you're talking about physical
Fine.
shortages that cannot be fixed in a short period of time.
Well,
With
I
the
mean,
pandemic, we could decide that the essential workers had to go back and risk
mm,
their lives to get us the things that we needed. We can't
but
do that if we don't have the materials.
factories did shut down because of the political hysteria, though. So it was a real, like,
Yes,
workers were not
but there
affected.
were exceptions made for essential workers, like the meat packers who had to
Yeah, yeah,
risk COVID and everything else. Like,
fair.
and like there wasn't a prolonged shut in of like the feedstocks that power
So
much
this
of the
is
things that we're talking about in the world. So
Yeah. So we both agree it's bad. Whether it's worse than the pandemic or half as bad as
yeah,
pandemic, I don't know. It's bad. My point to you would be that the White House understands this. What I want to say to everybody out there who is looking at these troop deployments, like, it's too late. If you want to actually have a reasonable, efficient, effective ground force incursion, you would have had to start massing those troops 6 months ago. If you're going to start doing that now, it's going to take you 6 months to put them in place to do anything. By then, like, the world, we're talking like Mad Max, the Road Warrior, right? Like, we're fucking killing each other for canisters of gasoline. It's too late. It's too late. Like, 8,000 Marines, like, get out of here. Like, oh, they're going to seize Carg Island. Carg Island is that Chicago house in the suburbs with cabin inside, okay? Um, Now, there's a couple of other places that America may want to invade instead than Carg Island. So for example, if you look at the map of the Persian Gulf, the problem with Karg Island is that it's actually pretty tucked in. So it is far from the actual Strait of Hormuz. Now it is leverage. If the U.S. were to seize it, Iran would not be able to really control its own transportation of energy, but then it would retaliate against energy in the region. So that's not good. No, there's a different island called Qeshm, Qeshm. Take a look at Google Maps. It's Iran's aircraft carrier, effectively. It's right astride the Strait of Hormuz. That would be a juicy place to go in. If the US could seize it, it would basically have almost like an offensive lineman holding back Iran from Hormuz. The problem is it's huge. It's like, I think 60 miles across. You're not going to conquer that with 8,000 troops. Grenada invasion in the 80s was effectively 7,000 Americans, and Grenada had 600 Cubans defending it. Like, you know what I mean?
Grenada. You say Grenada. I say Grenada.
I'm sorry, I'm two beers deep. Okay,
I know.
so
I'm just trying to help.
my ESL is coming out. My English second language. So the only two islands that I think President Trump could conceivably invade with the. Oh, by the way, there's people asking, what about seizing the shoreline? It's very unpopulated. Only Banter Abbas has a population. You can use 8 to 20,000 Americans to kind of seize the shoreline of Iran around Hormuz. I mean, that's insanity. Like, guys, you couldn't invade Santa Monica with 8,000 people, for God's sakes. It's not going to happen. So, again, remember, Gulf War I, 750,000 men with guns. Gulf War II, 300,000. So what I think is potentially a way out here, a middle ground, if you will, is the islands of Abu Musa and Tunb, spelled Tunb. Why? UAE and Iran have a dispute over them, so America could use plausible deniability to claim that it's not invading Iran. It's actually invading islands that are in dispute. President Trump could then show that it shows how awesome America is, raise the U.S. flag, and kind of declare victory. They are strategically completely irrelevant. Um, Other than those two tiny islands that are disputed, I gotta tell you, everyone who's listening to this, anything short of 100,000 American troops, I just don't think moves the needle anywhere. And in fact, if President Trump disagrees with me, sorry to interrupt, cousin, I'm going to stop very quickly. If he disagrees with me and if he's been given bad advice, he could be walking into Operation Eagle Claw. So this is Jimmy Carter's attempt to free the hostages that went south, except in President Trump's case, it could be hundreds of Americans dead in this, like a very unplanned, poorly manned attempt to use ground forces. So to answer your question, like, why am I not in the same place as you are? Because I just don't believe the U.S. administration, that the Trump administration is that stupid. I don't.
Well, he's definitely been given bad advice. I'm sure you saw the report that his briefing in the morning is a 2-minute reel of things that they're blowing up, and he's got crystal meth Rumsfeld in his ear talking about all the kill ratios and everything else. But so let me try and pin you down on this. So you're sticking to your guns in the sense that you think this is over in a week?
So it's not just about the U.S. Obviously, it's also about Iran. I think that both sides. So we talked about the U.S. U.S. went into this without having supplied sufficient vessels and ground troops to do anything but a short war. This isn't about President Trump wants a short war. This is about the fact that the U.S. has no troops in the region, not 600,000 Schwarzkopf had, none. This is about the U.S. having 8 Arleigh Burke class destroyers, 8, which is like 50 less than what you need to open the straits. So that's just the material reality, Jacob. It's not about what President Trump wants, although I do think he wants a short conflict. He said it before. He's called it an excursion. So that now your counter to me might be, well, but it's not just about the U.S. It's about Iran. And this goes back to the podcast I think we recorded last 13 days ago. I'm not moving away from that. Iran has leverage right now. True. But if we fall off the economic cliff, cousin, they risk overplaying their hand. Because once you fall off the cliff, once the helium gas is no longer being shipped, once plastic prices go up, you're going to have the whole world hating you except for Russia and maybe Norway. God bless them. They're swimming in oil, so they're happy. So like the point is, if Iran overplays their hand, they will unite the whole world behind President Trump. Even though right now everyone's kind of pissed at the US for doing this for no good reason. Like, what are you guys doing? Like, you riled up the hornet's nest, but then didn't bring the spray to kill the hornets with. What are you guys doing? You're unprepared. Now the fucking bees and hornets are destroying the picnic for everyone else. Everyone's mad right now at the US, but I'll tell you this, man. We blow through this into May. You've got Chinese vessels shoulder to shoulder standing next to the US Navy, opening the straits. And you've got every single capital on the planet, again, other than Russia, begging the president of the United States to initiate a brutal and savage punitive air campaign against Iran. So, yeah, I think both sides are constrained. I think President Trump is constrained. I think Iran is constrained. If they overplay their hand, if they're sitting there being like, yeah, we're going to cause a global recession, what's up? What's up is that you're going to be an economy parking lot outside of LAX. That's what's gonna be what's up. And no one's gonna feel sorry for you because unemployment's gonna be 10, 15%. People in Australia and South Korea and God knows where are going to be like, running around with little like plastic canisters trying to get gasoline into their mopeds. Like, dude, everyone's gonna be on the same page at that point. So my low conviction view, so it's a low conviction view, is that yeah, I do think this probably ends mid early to mid-April, which is soon.
I hear you about the Iranians, and there's two. I think we can both agree it makes no sense for them to give up now.
Not right
Absolutely
now,
none.
not like day to day, yes,
Yeah.
but like 7 days from now,
7 days from this is the thing. They have to show that the economy is going to experience extreme pain for the United States and Israel having done this. And this is where the jawboning in the oil market and some of the way the market reaction is dealing things versus the physical shortage seems to be undermining things a little bit. Because like I said, Brent crude's at 93. The strait has been closed for the 13 or 14 days that you didn't have podcasts from us guys, and Brent crude is at 93. The companies that I consult for, the analysts that you and I are talking to, are freaking the fuck out. They have the world is ending, and the market is like, like things are fine. And so if you're the Iranians, you're looking at that and you're saying, well, we have not imposed enough pain at all. And in 7 days, if Brent crude is still sitting there at 90, we're still sitting there at 100, or if everybody's just, all right, there's going to be a taco and everything else like that, they have to stay in the fight long enough to where you get to the edge of the cliff. Now, I take your point that they don't want to go so far off the cliff that they unite everyone around them, but I would push back against you. This notion that the world is going to be cool with the United States making Iran a parking lot and that all the blame is going to go on Iran, I'm not sure I buy that. I think the Chinese are fine for the Americans to be distracted here. The Chinese refine and process a lot of these things. They've got energy that they need. They've got more
they
reserves than
don't.
everybody else. It's the allies that are going to run out before then. Vietnam, Japan, the Philippines, South Korea. These countries are going to run out before China. They've got bigger problems than China does, and you already mentioned Australia, things like that. So I'm just not sure I see the shift there to all of the pressure going on Iran, whether it's going on the United States or whether we have just then gotten into an economic catastrophe that spirals, and no amount of bombing them is actually going to work. I don't know. I would push back against that. I struggle to see that one.
I mean, maybe. Look, what I would say is I disagree with you on China. I think China is going to be in huge problems here. They have a lot.
Everybody's going to be in huge problems. I'm just saying their problems will be relative to others. They will be a little better off, but everybody's going to be screwed.
But that doesn't matter. Objectively speaking, they have to worry about their domestic political stability.
Mhm.
And so no one in China is going to be happy that like the average Filipino is worse off than they are. They're going to be like, I can't, I don't have a job right now because the plant is shut down because the input into this semiconductor production process is not available. The
Although
Chinese,
they will be very happy that the Philippines is declaring an energy emergency and that Marcos Jr. is now reinvigorated about the China-Philippines relationship and wants to explore for oil and gas in the South China Sea together again. It's like Duterte is back, except it's Bong Bong. That's his nickname, by the way, for those of you who don't follow Philippine politics.
look, I think China came out today saying Hormuz has to be opened. China has huge leverage on Iran. This isn't just about US turning Iran into a parking lot. It's also the fact that Iran has a trade deficit with China. And for those of you who don't understand economics, that's insane. Like, they sell more oil to China than anyone else. How do you have a trade deficit with them? Well, that's because every single thing that makes Iran a modern industrial society comes from China. Every single one of them. Every single one of them. Not a single one of those things comes from like Russia. So, like drones, when like American propaganda was like Chinese, Russian drones have Chinese component in them. Brother, American drones have Chinese components in them.
Yep.
Which means also Iranian drones are built off of Chinese semiconductors. What do you think? Like Iran has semiconductor fabs? No. So my point to you, Jacob, is like the whole world is going to be telling Iran, like, nah, don't do this. This is painful to your friends like India or Malaysia and your allies like China. China also has to keep up relationship with Saudi Arabia in particular. Saudi Arabia, in my view, is far more relevant to China than Iran will ever be for a number of different reasons. First and foremost, they supply China with more oil. So China also has a diplomatic reason why it wants to rein in Iran. So that's the thing. If this goes off the cliff economically, Iran will lose China for sure. I think China will be much more willing to do something about this. And that's why I don't think they can let it go off the cliff. Now it's a low conviction view, just to be clear, Jacob. Like
Mhm.
I'm not
Oh,
sitting here like,
everything here is low conviction, right?
and you
Like,
know
I don't
why?
think
You know
there's
why? Because
no.
like if you and I were sitting around like drinking our brews in June of 1914, we'd be like, like this will be solved by Christmas. Like it just makes sense. The game theory proves that Austria and Serbia will just fight it out. And
Yeah, but do you? No, I agree. But do you think 6 weeks in we would have looked at each other and been like, "Oops,
I don't think
that was
so.
wrong"?
Well, I mean, that was a different era. It took a lot of time to like mobilize things and so on. Like, I think in this particular case, I I think that we're all looking at this and we're saying, well, it can't possibly end by April. And here's where I would say the controversial view I have, Jacob, is that there's war in the streets and there's war in the Middle East. Instead of war on poverty, they got a war on drugs so the police can bother me. That's Tupac Shakur in Changes, 1991. War in the streets and the war in the Middle East. What am I getting at? This is the Middle East. There's always war. And yet energy goes through. And this is something you've been saying by using the reference to Dune. The spice must flow. In the 1980s, Iran and Iraq had an 8-year war that cost between 1 and 2 million lives. Don't be telling me that that was not more of an existential threat than what is happening today to Iran. If you say that, you don't understand facts and history. The Iranian Revolution was 12 months old when a French armed and American supplied Iraq invaded Iran. Benjamin Netanyahu in 2026 is just Saddam Hussein in 1980. Same thing.
That's
Same
a good
thing.
take.
Absolutely. That's a fucking brilliant
That
take.
slaps. That's
That's
good.
1.5 beers in. Iraq was a proxy of the United States. The US supplied Saddam Hussein with satellite imagery. It was financed by Saudi Arabia, and it was supplied by weapons by Europe. And it fought a war with Iran where over 1 million people died, for God's sakes. 2,000 people are dead in Iran right now. And energy was impacted for sure, right? We had tanker wars. But the point is that we reached a kinetic equilibrium where despite this geopolitical calamity that was the Iran-Iraq war, oil flowed through the region. Why? Because Iran knew that it really couldn't cross that line. So it attacked like Iraqi vessels or vessels that were carrying Iraqi crude. So what am I getting at, Jacob? I think over the next 4 weeks, what's going to happen organically without negotiations is that Iran, the United States, and Israel will effectively come to a tacit agreement of what is kosher to bomb and what is not kosher, what is halal and what is not halal. And so we're already seeing that in real time. You're seeing more and more attacks by Iran on Israel, which quite frankly, nobody on the planet really cares except Israelis, God bless them, but nobody else does. Everyone kind of is like, meh, that's okay. The attacks against GCC are declining. So Iran is calibrating. And by the way, for anybody who wonders where I get this data, you can go to bcaresearch.com and click on our Iran dashboard, which is available to non-clients. And you can see this attacks against Israel going up, attacks against GCC going down. When Israel tried to attack Iranian energy, what did President Trump say? Don't do that. And at the same time, in parallel, Iran is negotiating with countries like China, India, and Malaysia transit of vessels through the Strait of Hormuz.
Mm-hmm.
We're organically coming into a world where it's going to be acceptable to have war in the streets and the war in the Middle East. Instead of war and poverty, they got a war on drugs so the police can bother me. Tupac Shakur, 1991. Guys, this has been going on for 50 fucking years. And yet the spice gets off of Iraqis. Why? Because if it doesn't, you've got the whole world against you, arrayed against you. 1987. In 1987, the Soviet Union sent minesweepers to help Americans open Hormuz. I'm telling you, man, in 6 months, the Chinese Navy is shoulder to shoulder with American, arrayed against Iran. So there is a world where 6 months from now, nay, cousin, 6 years from now, Iran and Israel are lobbing missiles at each other, and most of us are sipping a Peroni and enjoying a $3 gasoline because none of us are gonna really care.
Yeah, there's a lot of brilliance in there, but here's a few more pushbacks. First of all, let's start with the nerdy bits. You're of course right about June that the spice must flow, but everybody does unite against Paul and the Fremen, and he launches a jihad that consumes the lives of 61 billion people, and how much suffering and everything
Whoa,
else that happens.
that's
So, like,
movie 3. Come on, man, that hasn't come out yet.
okay, spoiler alert.
Spoiler
Second
alert.
of all, I am loath to quote Henry Kissinger because of how much I detest him. But there's a great vignette in one of his books about how he said Hafiz al-Assad, Bashar's daddy, the former Sunni dictator of Syria, he was the best negotiator he ever negotiated against. And I'll paraphrase because I don't remember the exact quote, but it's something like Hafiz al-Assad was the only negotiator who understood that it wasn't just his job to go to the tip of disaster, to the tip of the cliff. He would fling himself off the cliff, just expecting that somewhere on the 60-foot drop, he would find something to grab onto on the way down. And that was his entire negotiation strategy. It's hard to like map Hafez al-Assad, Sunni Arab secular dictator onto, Persian Iranian theocrats. But I think there is something to that because I hear everything that you're saying, but Iran has to make this hurt more before it can allow the situation that you're talking about to come into being, or at least that's the way I think it has to happen. So maybe they can wink and nod and say, okay, Japan, okay, China, yeah, I'm sure you saw that tweet about they're gonna call it the ayatollah, like pay us the toll and your ships can get through.
Wait,
But
wait.
yeah,
But
go
that's
go
important.
go,
That
yeah,
is
fine.
that is a way this accelerates the solution. Like, God bless IRGC. IRGC's got to get PAID, baby. Let's
Hmm.
go. Now I'm quoting Biggie. You see what happens when I have a couple of beers, man? I'm just
Only good things.
talking Biggie. Listen, IRGC's got to get paid, and they're going to get paid $200 million if they revert Hormuz traffic to its normal level and charge $2 million per vessel. They're making $2 million a day. And so this is
Per
like
ship. think per
No,
ship
no,
is
sorry.
the
No, 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 no. Well, it's 2 million per ship. If
per
there's
ship.
100 vessels, it's 200 million per
So
vessel,
200
per
million. Yeah, yeah.
200
Yeah.
million per day. And by the way, that's just a $1 extra per oil barrel. I think everyone's going to be cool with that. And like some
Is
journalists,
that in dollars or yuan or Bitcoin?
it's going to be in US dollars, baby. Well, we'll see what Iranians accept. But look, I hear you about Iran having to exert more pain. I agree with you. The only problem is it's not a linear sliding scale. At some point, if the economy falls off the cliff, it's just game over. Everyone's just going to be like, okay, well, we're done with you. We're not going to negotiate with you, and we're not going to let you use a fee through Hormuz. We're going to have a 35 nation alliance, which France is now negotiating. By the way, I don't know if you saw the headlines.
Hmm.
The world is just going to, at that point, stop negotiating with them. And you lose the $200 million opportunity through a fee structure. You lose the ability to get the Americans to tacitly agree to not bomb energy infrastructure domestically, civilian infrastructure. You lose all of that, and what you get is just punitive attacks. That would be. But listen, I agree with you. My point to you is that I haven't deviated from the sort of a timeline, but the probability outcomes, there's multiple scenarios, and there's very high probability that this just devolves into a quagmire, the quesadilla that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah. Well, and the reason I bring it up, so I mean, this is not my base case, but here is a scenario. So let's say I'm right about this, and that Iran thinks, okay, we need to do this for 10 more days because right now everybody's too sanguine. Markets think that what you just said is going to happen. So we have to thread the needle here. We can't push it so far that there's global economic catastrophe, but we need people to be a little more afraid that there is going to be global economic catastrophe than they are right now, because right now they're not scared enough yet. So they push it that far. At that point, does the United States have the discipline to understand, oh, Iran is doing what it has to from its interest? We are not going to escalate. We're not going to bomb the power plants. We're not going to take Karg Island. We're not going to push it. We're going to understand they have to make their point, and then we can have the art of the deal and go. Or does the United States escalate at that point, and then Iran starts bombing regional energy infrastructure and going after the desal plants? This, by the way, raises a question that's been an open one to me since the very beginning, which is the Saudis have been puffing up their chest, at least according to reports the last couple of days. Finish them off. Persona non grata for Iranian diplomats inside of Saudi Arabia. Hey, Saudi Arabia, you've bought a lot of weapons. Like, are you ready to send your sons and daughters to die in Iran? Are you ready to fight for it? Because you're talking a big game. You're telling the United States to do that. You're telling them to send the Marines in to Karg and everything else, or at least according to the reports. So does Saudi Arabia get involved here? And then what you're talking about, that the attacks on the Gulf countries going down, it starts to go up. And by the way, if you really want to complete like the nightmare scenario here, at that point the Houthis decide to get involved because the Saudis are involved. And maybe it's not about Yanbu, but it's about we have to, start hitting the Saudis where it counts because they're attacking Iran. And meanwhile, Volodymyr Zelensky sees that Putin is lining his pockets with this high oil and sees that nobody's been listening to him because everything's distracted. And he'll do what he's been doing the last couple of days, which is knocking out Russian export oil infrastructure. And now we're off. Now it is kind of World War One because we've had a bunch of dominoes fall. Because even though what you're saying makes sense to me, if cooler heads prevail, like all of that hinges on the United States allowing Iran to push this farther and then making a deal. Is the White House capable of that? Like, there's just too many. I don't know. Like you hear, like
There's
it's a
never,
scenario.
well, first of all, I completely respect your view. I am not taking on any, I have a very sanguine geopolitical thesis here. I'm not putting any bullish trades on right now
Hmm.
for my clients. Zero. So, you know why, by the way? Because the market agrees with me. I hate that. Today, by the way, March 26th, today, we had a first real volatility event. I mean, the US 10-year yield is at 4.5%. For those of you
Yeah.
listening to this, that's game over, baby. It's over. Game over, man. Game over. 4.5% on the 10-year. Goodbye. Goodbye. So that's where we are. Um, and of course, Nasdaq fell 2.5%. It's in correction territory. The S&P 500 is reaching technically some very, very nasty, nasty points. We are at the Liberation Day event from April of 2025. I think we're going to blow through a 10% correction and probably get to 20 at this point. Like that's where we are. So the reason that I agree with you that it's a very scary moment is because the market has been agreeing with my sanguine view for too long.
Yeah.
You know, so that's where geopolitics and markets like intersect. You can have a sanguine geopolitical view, but if the market agrees with you, you shouldn't be putting on any trades based off of that. You need the market to freak out to start nibbling at some risk on trades. So I'm just saying that just to show the amount of fear and respect I have for everything you just laid out. But
Mhm.
one thing I would say is that we've never had a president of the United States of America who is more willing to do whatever the fuck he needs to do to get out of this situation. So there's never
Yeah, but
been
it's not up to him this time, man.
no, no, no. I agree with
Like the
you.
Iranians are listening to this podcast and they're like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
we got to make the market freak out a bit more."
No, listen.
Exactly.
I hear you. I hear you. But it is important. It is important that America can pivot very quickly, and not fall for like Iranian provocations. So President Trump is basically like, they're begging us for a deal. And the Iranians are like, we're not even talking to you. He's like, liars. Like, I mean, we've won. And the thing is, look, success is in the eye of the beholder. And objectively speaking, I mean, I can tell you the target set of the US and Israel. We have the data. They have pulverized Iran's ability to launch missiles and drones. The problem, as President Trump eloquently told us on March 26th during the cabinet meeting, which thanks tips, we knew this for 4 weeks and before, he can be 99% successful, but that 1% means a vessel gets impacted by a drone. Like he was explaining this today, he was mansplaining this to the
Mhm.
world. Like, yeah, we know what asymmetry looks like. President Trump, like, yeah, maybe you should have had more than 8 destroyers in Strait of Hormuz to deal with that asymmetry, but whatever. The point that I'm getting at is that you can objectively argue that America has accomplished its mission. The ballistic missile capacity has been degraded. Like, I have that in the data. Like, Iran's attacks on the region are declining. The nuclear program has been obliterated. And the Navy is at the bottom of the Persian Gulf and the Indian Ocean. So this is an administration, Jacob, that unlike previous administrations can just declare victory and move on. And then just call the press a bunch of liars. Like that's what's gonna happen. And your point is like, yeah, but Iran is then not gonna accept that. Sure. But then they have their own set of problems, which I've articulated, which is that if you push this to a point where China hates you, like, that's not a good place to be. So they themselves could then, again, you don't need a ceasefire, Jacob. You don't. You can continue attacking Israel with ballistic missiles. Everyone's going to be okay with that except Israelis. Like, there's still ways for Iran to show the chest beat and all this stuff, but then quietly let vessels go through Strait of Hormuz while picking up that $2 million per vessel clip.
Yeah. There was a study published by the Royal United Services Institute of Defense and Security about munitions and when they're going to be depleted. And I think it's pretty telling that a lot of these munitions, especially for Israel, but also for the U.S., like some precision guided munitions, like some of the THAAD, some of these other things, you start to run out by mid-April. So to your point about timeline, like you really do have to wrap this thing up if you're the United States by
Dude, the
mid-April. And if you don't,
The Rheinmetall CEO publicly just said that. He was
yeah,
like, the West is out of missiles.
which is pretty remarkable. Um, okay, well, like I said, that was a scenario. I'm not even sure that that's my base case, but I
No,
am
no, no.
thinking about
We
li-
should we should tell the listeners this can go mega bad.
yeah, and I do think there's an extent to which once you start getting down the ladder of escalation, there is no stopping it. It doesn't matter if President Trump wants to stop it. It's close to getting out of his hands. it might already be out of his hands. Like, I think you're saying that he can still stop it. The thing that is most disturbing me is I think it might be gone already. I think it's lost. I think it's now in the Iranians' hands. And I don't know what the Iranians are thinking. If you told me that Iran collapsed tomorrow, I'd believe that. And if you told me that the IRGC, this was all part of the plan, I'd believe that too. We just don't have a lot of good insight there. Um, let if your version, well, actually, no. Let's take a step back, because one thing we want to talk. We've been focused a lot on the Middle East and the headlines and things like that. Let's talk about Europe for a second, because Europe, I wouldn't say Europe is as exposed as say India. For me, India is probably the worst hit of the entire world in all of this. But things looking pretty bad for the Europeans. You and I are both bullish the Europeans. I thought 2026 was the year the Europeans could finally take a deep breath on energy. That you got that Qatari LNG coming online, and they've been doing things for 2 years, and things are going to be okay. That's out the door. Some of my contacts have been talking about hoarding, not just of energy supplies, but petrochemical supplies, and they're dealing with months potentially of shortages. They got to refill the gas. What are you thinking about Europe right now? Do you think it's going to be a tough 8 months for them, no matter what happens?
Yeah, I mean, like India, South Korea, Taiwan, Australia, those are some of the countries that are extremely exposed to this. Europe is right behind them. Um, and I think that there are pockets of sanity in Europe. Emmanuel Macron, is out there talking to 35 different countries to assemble an armada to go into the Strait of Hormuz. Supposedly, according to the French government, it includes countries on every continent. It includes countries like India, so it's not just like European countries, but across the board. The idea is that once the conflict ends, this armada would go to the strait and demine, make sure that vessels are escorted. Anyone who's listening to this and laughing at this should stop laughing at it. The French Navy is a serious navy. It can actually do this, especially if it's backed up by like India, South Korea, Japan, Australia, China. Um, but other than that, for the most part, I think Europeans have shown a complete and utter inflexibility on how to deal with the multipolar world. They're out there basically, still talking about not taking Russian natural gas, and that's just insanity. Like, it's just insane. First and foremost, they should absolutely be thinking about restarting nuclear power. I mean, that's like obvious. But the easiest way to deal with this is stop begging Ukraine to allow transit of Russian oil through a pipeline that goes through Ukraine and order Ukraine to do that. Because Ukraine's lights in its cities, like the heat in Ukraine that warms its people, the weapons, the bullets in their guns are paid by Europe. So like that's the first issue. The second issue is, yeah, of course you should take Russian oil and gas. What are we talking about here? Obviously, that's in your national interest. Oh, but they're evil, Marco. Yeah, I get it, but for the next 6 to 12 months, you know?
For the next 6 to 12 months, they're less evil than the bigger
No,
threat. I hear
they're
you.
just as evil as they ever were, just to be clear. But the issue is that this is the multipolar world you live in. There are no enemies, there are no friends. They're just interests. And so when I look at the behavior of the commission, particularly the foreign policy head and the president of the commission, I'm just not impressed by Europe at all. They seem to be unaware that in a multipolar world, they need to look out for European interests, not for ideological coherence and normative excellence. No one's going to give you an A plus because because you stood on your morals. So yeah, I think that on that front, Europe has failed the test. You know, Europe has to understand that you might have to deal with Russia. That's just a reality. Just like I don't disagree with President Trump's administration unleashing Iranian floated storage into the market. Like, yeah, Of course, you have to do that. You're trying to extend the period during which you can impose pain on Iran. Similarly, for Europe, like, hey man, if America is going to throw a hand grenade into your energy supply, find an alternative. And if that means dealing with Russia, you have to deal with Russia. That is absolutely the world we live in.
I hadn't sort of focused on that, but I remember in what was it, 2022, when everybody was saying that the Europeans were going to freeze in the winter without Russian natural gas, and I did the math, and it was clear to me that they were going to be able to cobble together enough supplies to get through the winter, especially if it was a mild winter, and it turned out to be a mild winter. And I remember one of the anecdotal reports that I read was that like a month or two, it was like September or October, we were heading into winter, and it was only then that the city, I think it was in Berlin, it's the Brandenburg Gate that's in Berlin, is that right? They decided to shut off the lights at night so that the tourists couldn't see it. And I was like, "Oh, okay. So you've had enough power to keep the lights on the Brandenburg Gate this entire time. Like you're fine. Like if you were serious about this, you would have had the lights off already." And I say this because I'm waiting. You know, France is fine. They've got nuclear power. They've got an aircraft carrier. Macron can do things, and he's not over a barrel, if you will, the same way that the Central and Eastern European states are. And I'm talking to Germany now. I am waiting for Germany to wake up. I can't, as a Jew whose family fled Germany, scary to say that. I'm waiting for Germany to wake up. And one of the things I'm waiting for is just reverse nuclear policy. Like this is not complicated. Like just it's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen 6 months from now, but start making a plan. And earlier this month, a couple weeks ago, Friedrich Merz was asked about this, and his answer was that it wasn't possible, that he regretted this, but that was the way it is, and they're concentrating on the energy policy that they have. That's not good enough, man. Like if this is really a crisis, like it's all hands on deck.
No,
It's
listen,
like,
it's
you know,
Jacob, it's very simple, man. Are you serving normative and moral goals, or are you serving Europe's interests? Like, that's the question to me. By the way, fine. Germany doesn't want nuclear power. Here's a secret that nobody seems to understand. So I'll spell it out for people. It's fine. If Illinois didn't want nuclear power plants, but Ohio did, like, who would give a shit? Nobody. Like, it's fine. It's fine. You know what, Germany, this is for some odd reason a political issue for you. Okay, fine. Let's put some more in Denmark. Let's put some more in Poland. Let's put some more in France. And then you can just ship the electricity via, like, power lines. Like, this isn't that big of a deal, Jacob, right? Like, fine. But it's more just a coherent, like, attitude of Europe. It should be talking to Russia. Like, yeah, look, we hate you, you hate us. We're going to keep supplying Ukraine with weapons, brother. But we need some of your gas. Like, it's okay. It's okay for 12 months to bridge this particular situation. That is the kind of strategic thinking that the world needs today. And the irony is that Trump knows how to do that. He knows how to pivot back and forth. One day he's talking about how Iranians are evil and they're cutting off heads of babies, whatever the hell he was talking about. I have no idea. But the other day he's like, God bless him. They're putting up a good fight. You know, in a multipolar world where threats are coming at you nonstop, you cannot have a rigid ideological anchor. And Europeans are absolutely failing on that front.
well, and I take it you don't think this is going to get bad enough for them to finally give that up, because they didn't give it up with COVID. I mean, they've taken steps. It's like one step forward, two steps back. COVID didn't do it. The Russian invasion didn't quite do it. I guess this isn't doing it either. I mean, are they ever like? Is our bullishness just misplaced there? If
Well, no, I
if they
mean,
can't do it now, when are they going to do it? Like it's time. It was time yesterday.
look, there's all sorts of reasons why I'm bullish in Europe, right? It has nothing to do with them, like, learning from their own history. Like, Cardinal Richelieu is like level 74 geopolitical mage. Kaya Kalas is what we would call in the gaming community a noob. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I know.
she needs to know, she needs to learn about Richelieu. Like, this is Europe needs to learn how to be Machiavellian. That's all I'm saying. And right now, shaking their fist at America for doing something stupid, like, fine, yeah, that's fair. The US again, like stir the hornet's nest, and everyone who was having a nice picnic is now having to deal with hornets stinging China, stinging poor Australia that was just out there like eating some Vegemite, you know what I mean, on a nice blanket. Like everyone was having a nice picnic and Americans fucked it up. We all understand that. It's fine. You can say something about that. But how to deal with this can't just be like, oh, well, we're going to bury our head in the sand and we're going to pretend that Russia doesn't exist. No, man, you're going to restart your natural gas pipelines to Russia and you're going to give Russians billions of dollars and it's fine. It's fine because it's temporary. You know, you can still support Ukraine, you can still give it weapons, you can still support it financially. You're not abandoning that, but you need to bridge this very critical moment. And here's why. For Europe, it's not so much oil, it's the LNG.
Hmm. Yeah.
And the thing is, there is no Yanbu for LNG. There's no way to divert the LNG transports. They got to go through Hormuz. The attack against the LNG field in Qatar was kind of overstated in its scope. It is just 2 to 3% of global supply. There's more supply coming online globally. It will be fine, but it might require 6 to 12 months. And nothing would speak to Europe's ability to flex its muscles, its market size, and its sophistication. Like, yeah, sure, whatever. Hey, Russia, we'll take some of your gas. You're desperate, aren't you? Like, and then after 12 months, we're just gonna stop buying it again. You know, so yeah, that's where I am on this. I think so far Europe's performance has not been great. Now, there's been a lot of criticism that Europe has no teeth, has no this, has no that. I disagree with that. Like, what are they supposed to do? The U.S. did this. What is Europe supposed to do? But I do think that the fundamental, like basic precept of geopolitics in a multipolar world is that you have to look out for your own interests. And that means making deals with the devil on occasion.
Yeah. Um, I would caution. I've heard that the damage in Qatar is worse than that. I don't think
Mm,
anybody really knows until the fighting has stopped and until we actually get in there with and the fighting's not over. It could get worse from now. Like
fair.
until there's a real damage assessment, I would put a pin in that. And also, a lot
A
of the
lot of
supply that's
pride.
coming online in
Oh,
the coming years is from the United States. So maybe Europe becomes dependent on the United States rather than Russia, or has to play both sides off of each other. I also don't know if you saw this. This was from the Singapore foreign minister said this in a press conference, I think, or some kind of thing earlier today. And I'm going to paraphrase a little bit of it, but it sort of, I think it does two things. Number one, it underscores what you just said about Europe and about the need to not have ideology drive policy. I think it also, though, pushes against what you said about the world uniting against Iran. So the Singapore foreign minister says that the Pax Americana has, been great for everybody for the last 80 years. But whether you like it or not, objectively, this period has ended, and the underwriter of this world order, the United States, has now become a revisionist power and even a disruptor. The larger point is that the erosion of norms, processes, and institutions that underpinned a remarkable period of peace and prosperity, that foundation is gone. And what you're seeing now in Ukraine, in the Middle East, in Asia, are the symptoms of an underlying tectonic rupture. You have to take the world as it is rather than trying to assign blame or to use pejorative adjectives. So I say all that to say, I think you're totally right about ideology not having room there, about having to narrow the articulation of the national interest. But I would also just point out that's Singapore saying uh, the U.S. is the revisionist power in the room, not Iran. Like the U.S. is the one that is driving this. This is the fault of the United States. We will all suffer for it, and we all have to make our own deals accordingly going forward. Which from Singapore, that was like a pretty eye-opening statement. And as always, like Singapore only exists because they're very good at geopolitics, so they're always a place to understand how things are going.
yeah. I mean, and that's where I think that, when you see some of the statements out of Europe, it's just, yes, you've identified the problem, but you're not doing anything as a solution to it. From a geopolitical perspective, I think that it needs a reawakening, of just European interests and how to pursue those. So, I was talking to a very good friend of mine who I won't mention, but he'll be listening to this, so he knows who he is. Like, if I was running Europe's foreign policy right now, first step would be to go to Beijing,
Yes.
and just be like,
Yeah.
yo, like, how do we fix this? And then my second call would be to Putin. and be like, yeah, like let's restart the pipelines through Poland. I'm going to keep supplying Ukraine with weapons, and I'm going to keep supplying Ukraine with money. If you don't want to sell me gas because of that, then fine, fuck you. But if you want my billions of euros for your gas, then like let's set a price and let's restart it, because I'm not going to let American adventurism hurt the European economy. Like I'm just not going to do that. And I just don't think that that's so what the European Commission did is they postponed, I think, the date. What was it? Europe postponed the date when they will ban
Yes.
purchase, right? And it's like, shut up. They postponed the date where they're going to ban all purchases of Russian oil, I believe, right?
Yep.
But, it was
They're
supposed to.
weenies. They're
Yeah.
total weenies. I'm with you.
So here's the headline: the European Commission has postponed the scheduled April 15, 2026 announcement of a legal proposal to permanently ban all remaining Russian oil imports. Shut up. Just like, what are you doing? Who cares? It's a commodity, It's transactional. You're not supporting Russia by buying their oil. Someone else is going to buy their oil, by the way. So it's like, one way or another, Russian oil is going to get to the market. This is just virtue signaling bullshit, and there's just no room for that in a multipolar world. So, yes, I've been very, very bullish Europe for a number of different reasons. It's not like their foreign policy acumen is the reason I want to own European banks. You know what I mean? Which, by the way, have outperformed NASDAQ over the last like 18 months. So,
Yeah.
the view has been right. And it's not like my view on European assets is going to be wrong if they never learn how to behave. I'm not making a markets investment point. I'm making just a overarching geopolitical point. This isn't about Europe being divided. This isn't about Europe having 27 member states. This isn't about the EU. This is just about basic precepts of geopolitics. If Singapore has figured it out, if Mark Carney from Canada has figured it out, like, you guys need to get on the same page. And if I see more virtue signaling from the EU Commission about this stuff, like, you know, it's the most un-European thing. And this is the funny thing about this. Europe gifted us Niccolo Machiavelli. Europe gifted us Cardinal Richelieu. Europe gifted us Lord Palmerston. Like, these are Europe gifted us colonialism and imperialism. Um,
And World Wars 1 and 2.
yeah,
So,
it's about time they start like brushing up on their own history and learning how to play the game they invented.
all right. Well, we're not going to hit everything. Before we turn to the NBA, what have we missed?
What have we missed? I'm not sure. Um,
It sounds to me, if we're trying to summarize views here at the end of this, because I also want to emphasize something. I mean, and let me know if I'm putting words in your mouth. I think it's nothing but low conviction views from here on out. Like I'm
Fog of
not
war.
highly yeah,
Yeah,
it's
fog of
fog of
war.
war.
Yeah.
Um, and for me at least, like my initial model for the 3-week, 4-week war, to me is broken. And I don't know whether that's because of what Iran's doing, whether because the Trump administration had bad information. I don't know, but like it's already gone on longer than I thought it was going to go on. And the scenarios that I am starting to entertain and prepare for are more nightmarish, which is not normal for me. My analysis is normally the opposite direction, but like I am staying up at night and I'm worried about kind of what I'm seeing. It sounds like you're a little bit more sanguine, but not so sanguine that you've got conviction the other direction and that you think the nightmare scenarios are crazy. Is that a good way of summing up where we are in this moment?
The constraint framework that I write about in my book, Geopolitical Alpha, is very, very difficult to remain wedded to it when it's very, very dark. So again, the siren song of these people are morons is very powerful, you know. And where I want to make very clear to everyone listening to this is that I am the most bearish I've ever been in maybe my life. As you said yourself, the pandemic was a political hysteria. This is actual molecules not being able to get to where they are needed, right? So this is so bad, but it's so bad that you would have to be an absolute moron not to understand that. And while there may be some of them in the cabinet, I don't think that they are the majority. I think this is basic mathematics. I think that the same people I'm talking to who trade commodities, the White House is talking to them as well. I know that for a fact. They understand the physical reality of physics of molecules. And so I think that the Trump administration knows there's like a ticking clock. And to your point, like, yes, it's not about them. I think Iran also understands. And by the way, I have evidence of this. I have evidence of what they're targeting. I have evidence of their behavior during Iran-Iraq war. I have evidence of how they're negotiating safe passage of vessels through Hormuz. So I believe that the Trump administration knows that it's got to wrap this up in basically the next 2 weeks. And I can already see that Iran is behaving like it has in the past, which is being able to separate the shipment of energy through Hormuz from geopolitical conflict, you know? So that's why I guess I'm both extremely concerned, but that extreme concern tells me, look, Jacob, you and I can't be the smartest two men in the world. Like other people know how.
Oh, we can't? Why not? Has the rest of the world impressed you so much?
Oh man.
We
Yeah.
are the Kwisatz Haderach. We can take the
We are.
spice. We can see the other side.
Oh my
Trust me.
God. No, 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 we're not. Like even, yeah. Look, man, I mean, you know, but so yes, I think you've summarized it well. I'm sticking to my constraint framework, and I believe the constraint framework will force the two sides to come to an equilibrium. That equilibrium may not be articulated in a deal. It may not be articulated in a ceasefire. It may not be articulated in any rhetorical, verbal, written agreement. In fact, it may be so subtle you may not even know there's an agreement. The targeting, the kinetic action, the actual warfare will simply migrate from what's relevant for the economy and the markets to what's not. You know, and by the way, one thing about Israel, everybody says, what about Israel, man? You're not like adding them to the equation. Well, because they are, you know, not wagging the dog. I don't believe that. Maybe initially they were. Maybe Netanyahu just convinced President Trump to do something stupid in a hasty kind of way. But, you know, like there's massive leverage the US has over Israel. Supply of interceptors, you know, help with servicing their fighter jets, which are not made in Israel. There's all sorts of ways the US can get Israel to agree to kind of a tacit equilibrium with Iran. But the biggest issue is what you mentioned earlier, which is that Israel is about to expand into Lebanon.
Yeah.
You know, and that is something that, I mean, it's a pretty big endeavor. It's going to enlarge the state of Israel. That's, you know, it's a country of 10 million people that's about to take on another Golan Heights kind of a project bigger. I mean, from what I
Much bigger.
understand, yeah.
And has a prime minister who's talking about them like a great power, and a former prime minister who's talking about Turkey being next. I mean, they've proven me wrong since October 7th on Hezbollah and on Hamas, but at a certain point they're going to be overextended.
Nah,
And I think they're already there. I mean, like,
nah. This is gonna just, you know, man. This is the. I mean, we got to redo our ranking of leaders.
we do.
If we don't, you know what I mean? Like, I think that was
It's time.
we got to do the draft picks again. But look, I think, I mean, from what I understand, Israel is going to expand to Tyre, right?
Yeah, no.
So I think that Israel,
But like Israel doesn't have an occupation army. Like,
it does now.
well, that's what I mean. Like okay, like good luck.
But look, the point is, from the perspective of this conflict with Iran and the Strait of Hormuz, which is far more relevant for everyone listening to this than anything happening in Israel or Lebanon, um, you know, be as that may be a human tragedy, like let's leave that aside. The point is, Israel is going to have to listen to the US. If the US tells Israel, hey man, like, can you please not piss off the Iranians for the next 6 months while we're getting this traffic through Strait of Hormuz? What's Israel going to say? No, we're going to fight Iran and Hezbollah and Lebanon and ethnically cleanse 4 million people. Like, no, come on. Like, that's just not going to happen. Israel's going to be like, okay, cool. Like, you got the lead on Iran, but we get to take a third of Lebanon, right? And in fact, you could argue that Prime Minister Netanyahu is a genius. He's got us all distracted by this Iran stuff. Like we're all like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to like hoard gasoline the way I hoarded toilet paper. Like that's where we're at right now. Meanwhile, Israel is about to expand to like ancient Carthage.
But yeah, was Carthage? I guess it was that far. I was thinking of it as like ancient Phoenicia. But yeah, I mean, and it also goes to the multipolar. I mean, Russia
Sorry, my
invading
bad. Phoenicia. I meant
yeah,
Phoenicia.
Phoenicia.
My bad.
Don't
My bad.
talk about my Carthage. Like that's near and dear to my heart. My goodness.
My bad. Yeah, sorry. Phoenicia. Like tire. Yes.
Russia invading Ukraine, Azerbaijan taking Nagorno-Karabakh,
Yes.
Israel taking southern Lebanon. There's no
I know
difference
where you're
in
going.
these things.
No, I know
these
where
are
you're
all
headed.
the same thing.
Serbia taking back Kosovo. Let's go there.
Oh yeah.
Like,
India taking Kashmir, like getting rid of independent status there. China getting rid of one country, two systems with Hong Kong.
France taking back Belgium. What? What? Like, where do we stop? Listen, this is the world of revanchism. So when Singapore accuses America of being revanchist, fine, but the thing is, that's the world we're in. And the reality is, here's the truth, man. There were never norms and values to begin with. They never were. There was just one big bully that told you there were. But America broke norms and values throughout the 90s into 2000s. I don't care what learned elites at CFR events sipping, watered down cocktails in crappy ballrooms at a Hyatt in DC say. Okay? There was never, ever a normative moral commitment to some sort of bullshit international law. U.S. did whatever the fuck you wanted.
You're speaking as a Serbian. Like
absolutely.
There was the difference. Yes. The difference is like in the 90s, like if you went to see The Wizard of Oz, you saw the scary version with all the smoke and the big stuff. And now you are looking behind the curtain and it's just a little man like pulling some levers.
Look, what I'm trying to say is that there never was any of that shit. Okay, well, American elites just stole that themselves so they could sleep well at night. But the Turks got to ethnically cleanse Kurds, but then Serbs couldn't do it to the Albanians. And by the way, of course they can't. That's a humanitarian violation of rights.
I agree with you. All I'm saying is that the idea of it was alive. Like it was there. It was treated as something that was real. Like it had currency. It has no currency anymore.
I mean, you either have herpes or you don't, Jacob. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care what the idea is. And the truth is this. Look, what I'm getting at, what am I getting at? What I'm getting at is that it's not like America broke that. That's what I'm getting. I'm actually defending the US of 2026 by saying that now that there's no overpowering superpower to just bully everyone and be hypocritical and everybody has to take it, now everybody gets to do that. That's the only difference. And that's why I think that the sooner countries realize that that's the world they're in and put the sign out of the shop window down. That was Mark Carney's point at Davos. His speech's point was, we got to stop just telling each other that America's revanchist and evil and that they've turned away from norms and international law. We just got to start living the world we're in. And that's my criticism today of Europe in this particular crisis. And that would be my retort to Singapore. America's not revanchist. There was never any world system to begin with. There was just power. And now that power is diffuse, so Azerbaijan gets to take Nagorno-Karabakh back.
Yeah, I mean, we could debate that till the cows come home. But I will say, I think the thing about Carney taking the sign out of the window is well placed in the conversation. And I'll also say, like, one of the parts of that speech that I think has been underplayed is one of the things he says in it is that, and we will all be poorer and less technologically advanced and less cosmopolitan because of this, but so be it. That is unfortunately what's in front of us, and now we just have to do the best we can. I was actually thinking about this in the car today. We have it so good we have hot water in our houses, and we can stream. I can stream anything I want online at any time. Like things are good. Like I think we're gonna look back and boy, did we
But
really
you know what? Let me try.
overlook
Let me try
how good
to.
things were.
I know I was a bitter Serb like 10 minutes ago, but let me actually be very optimistic about this now. I'm not sure that you are correct.
Good. I want to be wrong. Tell me.
Yeah. So, like, we're going back to the 19th century. That was the last time the world was like this. And the 19th century was actually an incredible moment of technological innovation and sophistication on a number of different levels, including philosophy. Uh, and I actually think that we're going to go back to that era because competition between states is not necessarily a bad thing. It can get out of hand. I agree with that. That's where we get world wars, and that's the danger. But I think that this world where countries are pursuing their own interests and competing with one another can be healthy, so far as there is a less ideological alignment. And this is the normative case for realism. The normative case for realism is that pursuit of power devoid of ideology can actually be pacifying because then you're not painting your enemy as some sort of an evil, force. You're not trying to normatively or from a value perspective create these zero sum games where everyone has to be not just defeated but destroyed in a kind of social Darwinian world.
Yeah.
And so,
No, sorry. Go ahead.
no, I mean that's it. Like in the 19th century, like when Bismarck tried to create the German Empire out of Prussia and various German kingdoms, like what was his ideology behind that? Like it was nationalism, like Germans should live in the same country. But he wasn't trying to say the French don't deserve to exist because they are evil. He was saying, like, no, actually, what France did is correct. They have it figured out. We don't. We need to be more like France. That was the impetus for nationalism throughout Europe. And in a way, that's what I'm getting at. The 19th century was largely devoid of ideology. There wasn't. I mean, there was some of it, like monarchism, republicanism. There were some ideological currents, but countries did not necessarily see each other as, you know, they didn't see each other as existential threats the way that it eventually happened when the ideology was introduced in the 20th century, particularly communism, you know, German
Yeah, fascism.
fascism. Yeah,
I
German.
mean, the right to exist comes out of
Yeah,
that conversation. I will say I've been reading about I've been because I agree with that view. It's a view that I've been talking about myself for years now. I've been going back and reading some history of the 1890s, and I'm still pretty early on in my reading here. But it's funny that it's also you're right about cultural effervescence and innovation and technological innovation. The switch from coal to oil, electrification, so many things that change society in such a rapid
medicine.
time.
Yeah,
It was also a time of incredible inequality. Like for the upper classes who enjoyed these things, yeah, things were really, really good. And
they're
for the lower
awesome.
classes
Yeah,
who weren't enjoying things were worse than ever. And they got a picture of what these really wealthy people were doing all the time, which starts to bleed into the rise of communism and the proletariat and the anarchists and the communists and the fascists and everything else, which is to say, even if you're right, if you're saying one view is right, 2 weeks, like the United States has a ticking clock, Iran has a ticking clock, they're going to get together, they're going to figure this out. How many people are going to starve in the world 9 months from now because they don't have enough food because we've already had a closure for as long as we've had? Like that's already baked in, and maybe we're fine. Maybe I'll be here in 2027 and I'll be saying blithe things like, oh, life's so great. I can stream whatever I want on TV. Meanwhile, how many millions of people died in sub Saharan Africa because they didn't have fertilizer? One other thing I want to say is that metaphor that you said about you either have herpes or you don't. It's the wrong question because in the 1990s you can ask the question, but did you love her? Like now the question is, do you have herpes or not? But there was another equation in the 90s, and that if you want to understand soft power at its core and both how weak and how strong it can be at different points in time, like that's your question. Um, anything on geopolitics before you want to get to the NBA?
no, this was great. Just 19th century. Whenever I think of 19th century, I think of like steampunk. I'm a
Hmm.
big fan of steampunk, so I just think we're going back to that. It's just going to be swashbuckling. Globalization and cosmopolitanism is not going to go away. It's just going to be, a little bit more steampunky. But yeah, all done with geopolitics. I did want to bring up one thing. We haven't talked about the NBA in a very long time.
We have not.
We do try to cater to some basketball fans. By the way, if you're not a basketball fan, if you're not an NBA fan, this concludes your
Yes, it's okay. You can
broadcast.
turn off here.
You can turn off here. Um, NBA expansion,
Yeah, baby. To what? Las Vegas and Seattle, right?
right? So I have an alternative proposal.
Great. Let's hear it, Commish.
All right. So my proposal is that the NBA should expand not to Seattle and Vegas. It should expand by 30 new franchises.
30. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
I'm
So
listening.
so hear me out. The biggest problem in the NBA today is that basically you've got like 10 teams that decide like 20 games in they don't want to play anymore. Okay. So the Gini coefficient is through the roof because you've got 10 teams that just like couldn't really beat a college team on purpose. And there's all sorts of like ideas on how to solve this. How do you get these like crappy teams to care so that we can go and watch a game and like care about what happens? There's no way to really do it. I mean, you could like kind of flatten out the probabilities of the draft. I've got a better idea. You create 30 new franchises in America and Canada, maybe Mexico. I don't like the Europe idea. It's too far. Like it doesn't work. Leave them be.
I was going to say that. So the Europe idea, I should have said, and Adam Silver is apparently pushing this, is there would be 12 NBA Europe franchises. The Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund would get the one in Paris. Qatar Sports Investment would get the one, in London. Qatar Sports Investments would get the one in Paris. Wonder if they're still going to be doing that based on the
Yeah,
war that just
but
happened
wait,
in general.
but
So,
that
but
would not
interesting.
be. But that would be owned by the NBA or co-owned, but they wouldn't be part of the NBA league. My idea is you create Serie A and Serie B. You create the NBA and NBA B League. And the
Mhm.
reason that you don't want to fucking tank is that if you're in the bottom four, you go to the B League.
Oh yeah, relegation. Sure. Yeah, I like
Relegation,
that.
baby. Relegation. You know? And now what happens with the players when you get relegated? Hey man, like you don't get the TV deal. You can't pay your players. They get effectively cut, but there's an expansion or rather a relegation draft where their contracts can be picked up by other teams and they don't count against cap. So effectively, like if the Sacramento Kings, get relegated, DeMar DeRozan's is suddenly like free player. Like the LA Lakers can take him and don't have to pay his salary. Like, I mean, they pay his salary, but he does not count against their cap. And it'd be pretty sweet to have DeMar DeRozan right now if you're the LA Lakers.
Mhm.
Coming off the bench as the seventh, sixth player, like sick. So what am I getting at here? I'm getting at first and foremost, like who says no to this? Players? Why? You just created 400 new jobs in North America for basketball players. You don't have to go to EuroLeague to play. You don't have to go to like Thessaloniki. You can go play for Kansas City, whatever. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the B League does not get the TV contracts, but they negotiate their own B League contract. And what we know about TV right now is the only thing that's hot is live sports. I mean, we've got some desperate attempts by TV networks to like promote, crappy new sports. You've got instantly a brand new basketball league in America's like basketball crazed cities like the Midwest. And it's, live TV and I think it would be probably better than the EuroLeague instantly. Like the quality of this league would be very high.
I think I think there's a couple problems, and I've been thinking about this myself lately. And I have a friend here who actually I think used to work at the Athletic, or we need to get somebody on to talk about this because there's also a geopolitics of sport and like talking about soccer and the World Cup. Like we actually do need to get into this from a
Oh yeah.
geopolitical
Yeah, yeah. The World Cup
perspective
is
because I think
coming.
it's important.
You're right.
Um, but you know, there have been if you follow this at all, in recent years, you would have thought baseball was dying and that the NBA was ascendant and that the NFL would be around for a while, but concussions and everything else would conspire and the basketball was in the catbird seat. Now you've got The Athletic and the New York Times writing pieces that are saying maybe baseball has actually overtaken basketball as the
Yeah,
number two sport.
100%.
Um, Game 7 for NBA Finals, Thunder Pacers drew 16 million viewers.
Nobody watched it.
Game 7, Dodgers Blue Jays, 26 million
And
viewers. And that's
that's
a trend line.
just in the US.
Yeah,
That's just in the US. How many people in Japan watched that game
exactly.
7? Yeah.
So like, and I actually myself, like, I mean, I love basketball. I love to play basketball. I will say basketball has gotten, I'm a little tired of these guys.
Yeah,
Like, I'm
of
tired of
course.
the resting and I'm tired of the
Yeah.
whining. I'm
Thank you.
tired of the game. The game is not fun to watch anymore. We're just jacking
Mhm.
threes all the time. I whine about it too because, like, when I'm playing pickup, guys like to play pickup with me, not because I'm that good. I'm like a 38-year-old white guy who's had surgery on his hip who can barely do anything. You know what I do? I box out and I pass the ball. So everybody's like, get me
Yeah.
that guy because he's not just going to stand in the corner jacking up threes the whole time. Like, they like me from that point of view, but everybody's doing it. The game has fallen off. It's not like I actually don't watch it that much anymore. I follow it and then I turn on the playoffs. I would much rather turn on the Atlanta Braves and have a beer and talk
No,
about how the Braves are
baseball
doing than watch basketball. So
I agree with you. I mean, like, my son, despite my greatest attempts at brainwashing, became like a baseball player. And in Serbia growing up, we definitely had baseball bats. We just didn't really use them for baseball. So, like, I was like the immigrant dad in the stands yelling like slide on first base. And like my son is just like his head is in the hands, like, fuck, dad, you don't slide on first base. And I'm like, why not? It's cool. So look, I completely agree with you. Like, I've gotten into baseball myself. I think what they've done with the World Classic is amazing. By the way, we didn't
amazing.
talk about Venezuela, like, revenge, baby. Let's go. Winning the World Classic. That was hilarious. Um, Canada almost beat the US in the quarterfinals, which would have been hilarious that, like, US beat Canada in hockey and then Canada beat US in baseball. But for basketball, I think the big problem, Jacob, is aside from resting, it's that like 30% of the games are already over by the time they start because teams are actively tanking. And if you force them to go into a league where effectively they lose the TV dollars from the Serie A, like Series A league to the Series B, like, I think people would not tank. Teams would not try to tank. It will be competitive. And I think it'd be cool. Like, having the Indiana Pacers compete with like a bunch of like lower tier teams for a whole season would be interesting. Like, who's going to get relegated, who's going to get promoted. Those things are going to be interesting. Obviously, I think it's going to be very difficult to sell this to owners of crappy teams because they're the most at risk. But I do think that the franchise fee of 30 new teams, dude, that would be a lot of money. So,
It
so
would. I would also just throw on the pile here, like, this also is kind of geopolitical. Baseball came of age during the American Civil War. Basketball is invented in the 1890s in the US because they're trying to figure out what athletes can do indoors. Also makes sense with like the makeup of the country. Kind of easier to be outside when it's a smaller country in the 1860s versus once you're like out in the plains and people are spreading and things are cold. Like, it's kind of different. But yeah, just a remind, like we were just talking about, like the 19th century, both baseball and basketball are children of the 19th century. There's nothing to say that some new sport won't arise or that one is going to overtake the other based on how culture is going. So I'm with you. Like, tanking is a huge problem for basketball, and they have to do something. And they're not treating it with any kind of urgency. The quality of the game is like, it's hard to watch the regular season. Like,
yeah,
I
yeah,
I will only watch the
100%.
playoffs.
Exactly.
So
And by the way, in the playoffs, you see how good the game is, even with a 3-point shot and everything. It's the regular season that the problem is. Just by the way, the expansion fee right now is between 7 or 10 billion per franchise.
insane.
So when the two new teams come into the league, every team is going to make about $1 billion from the two new. But if you expand it by 30 teams, I'm not saying that these teams would pay a $10 billion franchise fee to be in the second league, but I'm sure they're going to pay like a 2 billion fee. It would be like $2 billion per every NBA team. Like if you actually think about it.
I think a version of what you're talking about is also like you already have the G League or something like that.
Yes. Yeah.
Like take the current. I mean, they would never go for that. You want to get rid of tanking, so just install relegation now with what they have. Bottom 8 teams get relegated every
The
single year,
only
and not only do they get
yeah.
relegated, salaries of players go to G League salaries.
Oh,
Like
that would be
all
crazy.
contracts like shift down to G
Listen,
League level.
the only thing I would say is that right now most G League teams, not all of them, but a lot of them are in like, not even media markets. I mean, we're talking like
Yeah,
tiny. But I think you could find, Jacob, 30 cities of good size that could support an NBA team, like Nashville, Kansas City, Jacksonville, Tampa Bay. I'm obviously going with the football teams, right? That don't have an NBA
yeah.
team. Vegas, Seattle. Look, I'm already at 6. Like we could find 30 cities in America that are not like wherever the fuck Maine, what is it called? Maine clause or whatever, like Bangor, like I don't even know where Portland, I think. Some of these
Drive by at Maine. Wow.
like some of these G League teams uh are like pretty like in tiny markets. So,
Yeah, I'm just looking at.
yeah, Portland, Maine. Portland, Maine has the Red Claws. Sorry, the D League team is the Red Claws, and they play in Portland, Maine. I think we can do better than that. Nashville, Knoxville, Tampa Bay, Jacksonville, Kansas City, Vegas, Seattle. There we go. Like I got 7 teams already, and these are serious cities. They're not Austin. Holy shit. Austin would be a great place to have like a new basketball team. Yes, the San Antonio Spurs would be mad. Like, shut up, you'll be fine. So anyways,
Well, and I mean,
that's
soccer is. I mean, Austin FC is quite a
yeah.
production.
Yeah. And then, you could have a team in Montreal, you could have a team in Vancouver. Canadian expansion could be serious. Like, I think this would really be a great way. And NBA owners would be able to cash out at 2 to 3 billion per owner currently due to the expansion to 30 new teams. So you got to be sitting there. If you're the Indiana Pacer owner and you're like, holy shit, we're likely to be relegated if this comes into play. Or maybe a bad example because, Halliburton's going to come back. Let's say who really is constantly a terrible team? Sacramento Kings. Vivek is sitting there being like, oh my God, we're going to get relegated. Sure, but do you want $3 billion instantly in your pocket? I'll take that.
It's a nice dream. Unfortunately, like things are. I mean, yeah, the cultural tide is turning against the NBA. They have a
It
very
is.
big
It
problem on
is.
their hand, and I
It
don't
is.
think they realize just how bad. Or maybe we're just old. Like maybe the NBA is like the sport for Gen Z. I don't know, but like there is something out of touch between the way that the NBA stars are interacting with like American culture. Like something is not like the gears are grinding up against each other. I don't even really have a take there. All right. Anything else, cousin? Did we miss anything?
I think that's it. We're probably going to have to record a lot more.
No, we're gonna wait another 14. No, that's fine. We're gonna record again on Sunday. You miscreants, but stop all the energy that you're
No,
whining
I
and
love the
complaining.
energy.
When,
Let
oh, it's
them
fine.
let them whine. Let them whine. It's
No, I
good. It's
let them forward
flattering.
to their friends.
No,
Go like
listen.
every single time you want to whinge about how
Okay.
there's not an episode there.
Yes.
I want you to go find 5 people and send it to
Yes.
them, and then you can come and
No,
complain to me,
listen.
and I'll listen to you, and you can sit on my couch, and I'll listen to your stories about your dead cat.
Jacob, thank you. Yes. If you're going to whine, I encourage you to whine. Thank you. Thank you for listening and for, liking us, but please do forward it to 5 people like as well. Also, I would just say that if we wait another 2 weeks, we might be recording this with like one of those like bicycle dynamos, so just keep that in
It's
mind.
possible. It's
We might
possible.
fall
I
off that
mean,
cliff. By the way,
I'm done. I'm down here in the Gulf. We got plenty of natural gas down
listen,
here.
listen. Yes, exactly. You're in the episode. You're going to be fine. I'm in California, baby. We might have $10 gas any minute. Ultimately, I think the title of this one, I don't know what it's going to be, but I'm going to make a bid for Mad Max: The Road Warrior. I think that should be the title of our, because that is where we're headed, baby. If this
Yeah.
isn't over in 2 to 3 weeks.
Mad Max Hormuz Strait. Mad
Oh,
Max.
nice. Yes.
Yeah, I think
The
Mad
Hormuz
Max
Warrior.
Hormuz.
Mad Max: The Hormuz Warrior. There you go. Nailed it.
All right. Or no, Mad Max Fury Strait.
Oh, that's good too.
Yeah.
Although I like the original Mel Gibson ones, just because it had a certain, like, psychotic edge to it, which later revealed to be quite appropriate.
Yeah. Well, they all. I mean, I love them. I can't wait. I mean, it's. I can't
You
wait.
can't wait. You can't wait for us. You can't wait for us to be driving 1970s American muscle cars and stealing each
No.
other.
I can't wait for the next
gasoline.
movie. The next movie. I'm
Oh my
not trying to
God.
be CEO of the Bullet Factory. Please. I'm trying to stream my movies here with my non-alcoholic beers. Come on, calm down. All right. On that note.